Hello and welcome to another episode of Between the Bytes. My name's Derek here with Executech, and today I'm joined by James Fair and Tyler Rasmussen. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thank you very much.
So today we're going to talk about something that's come up a little bit in the last few episodes, and that is white hat hackers or hackers that are good guys. And we wanted to bring in James and Tyler and get their opinions and a little bit more insight from them. And let's start with what exactly is a white hat hacker? How would you guys define that?
Sure. Yeah. So if I were to define a white hat hacker, it's someone who is interested in breaking things in order to fix things. So not to exploit, not for any financial gain or personal gain, but to fix things. Now that doesn't mean that there's not some type of financial gain to be had, because we can talk about bug bounty programs and those types of things. That's pretty much what I would say. And in particular, it's not just breaking anything; it's breaking, web applications, intruding into a network, finding the vulnerabilities and the holes to get into a network. Could be a mobile device, could be mobile apps, could be an Internet of Things IoT device, could be a car. There's white hat hackers that do research on lots of different type of things that are computer based or have a computer chip in them. So hopefully that kind of helps paint the picture a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I should probably mention I mentioned no financial gain, but that's incorrect. Financial gain, yes, but you're getting paid by the people who you are targeting in order to fix things and find holes and fix things, rather than ill-gotten financial gain, which is criminal activity, black hat hackers.
Yeah, and that was the next question that I had was kind of how that financial end works. You had mentioned the bounty program. Is it usually by a bounty program, or have you ever come across any of these guys who are formally employed by various entities, or how does that typically work?
It can happen by a bounty program. I would say traditionally it didn't happen via a bug bounty program. The traditional model is that you were a penetration tester that either worked for yourself or for another company, and you would sell your services to companies and try to again break into their networks, their web applications, etc., and then give them your findings and help them guide them on how to make corrections and fixes. So that's more the traditional model. It's only been recently, within the past decade or even less, that it's really picked up steam in terms of a bug bounty program where companies have established their own formal bug bounty program that's open to anybody. They give parameters on this program to say this is what you can hit, this is what you can't hit. They name rewards, they name all of this, and then so that opens it up to just anybody to be able to do it, rather than formally engaging one person or one company to do it for you.
I would add that they're not typically in the consideration list, but there are other colors of hats in the hacking world. You have your red hat hackers, for instance. Those are the folks that they're going after the evildoers. So they're not only seeing the exploits, but they're going after the bad guys that are causing it. The attackers themselves, kind of a vigilante type group. And there's a few others, but that's probably the most common one.
Yeah, and I stumbled across some on YouTube and TikTok of all places of the red hat hackers, and they are pretty entertaining at times. You'll have some of them who will be on the phone with them. They'll develop full personas. One guy likes to pretend to be a little old lady. He'll even wear a wig for the videos. If it's one of those
Wow.
where they give you a little bit of money to try and get you to give them even more, he'll have them on the phone while he sits and spends their money on things and refuses to listen to what their process is and kind of plays dumb. Or I've seen him where he'll break into the webcam on their laptops while they're on the phone, and watching all of them try and duck out of the camera is pretty entertaining.
Yeah, that's interesting. It should be mentioned there's one other kind of, or at least one other kind of flavor of hat, which is the gray hat, which is someone who, is a legitimate security researcher, but also may be involved in a little bit of nefarious activity, or kind of straddles that line between good and evil. It gets kind of blurred. It becomes a kind of a gray area. So that's not uncommon in the past. So
Is having a white hat hacker or someone who does something similar along those lines, is that something that MSPs would typically employ?
I would say, and as an MSP, and that'd be a pretty big one, I think, to bring that on. Typically, you're going to find these in security firms. That's their specialty, right? Their job is to be hired out to find exploits or vulnerabilities, or even sometimes physical ways to exploit a physical system. probably far more so than a typical MSP. I don't know of any MSPs that hire them, but Tyler, do you?
Yeah, so actually, that's a good question. That being said, this year we are undergoing a penetration test by an outside firm that they can be considered white hat hackers. And then also, we offer those services to companies. In fact, we're proposing on right now to a company on physical penetration testing and social engineering, where we'll be calling up folks within their organization and posing as different outside third parties to try to get them to give us information. The answer is yes, we do this. And yes, we utilize them. I would say maybe historically MSPs have not done as much, but yeah, definitely in today's market we are doing it.
Yeah, I think there's still that mindset when people think of a hacker. They picture one of my favorite examples of what was the movie Swordfish. The guy's hacking, and he's got a gun to the back of his head, and there's like 27 monitors, and he's typing so aggressively on his keyboard, breaking into something. That's still what people think when they hear the word hacker. Social engineering is something that people need to be very aware of. And if you don't feel like answering a question, don't answer it or check the source.
Yep, no, that's a great point. I mean, humans are the weakest link, honestly, in the chain for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, there's definite technical vulnerabilities that exist and that we need to plug, but oftentimes these attacks occur from a human clicking on a link or entering credentials or doing something like that.
So overall, how do you guys feel about the increase of use of white hat hackers? I feel like a lot of it, like with the bounty programs, is pretty inevitable with social media and the general growth of the internet year over year. These guys have a very big voice. If they're ignored, they can get their message out there, or if they just feel like stirring the pot a little bit, they can send these vulnerabilities out there. I think just about every company, every major company in communications or online has had an issue with something like this. How do you guys feel about this increase and kind of the change of the structure with white hat hackers?
I think it's awesome because it provides us more information. And, the more information we have about vulnerabilities and holes and gaps out there, then the more we can do to fix them, right? So, especially true white hat hackers are going to be responsible with their disclosure of what they find. And so they're not going to inform the public. They're going to give companies at least 90 days and often more in order to, one, recognize the issue, compensate them for the issue, come up with a strategy to plug the hole, those types of things. If a white hat finds it before a black hat, I mean, how much better is that, right? Like, I don't think you can ask for anything better than that. Now, I guess you could have someone who's kind of a pessimist to say, well, then it just exposes it, or we find out a bunch of stuff. We have to spend more on security to secure it. Well, I mean, I think that's a terrible mindset because any one of those things could get exploited at any time by a bad guy, right? So, anyways, those are my thoughts. James, what do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think the more the better. Let's not kid ourselves. Just because someone on the good finds a problem or an exploit and tells us about it doesn't mean there aren't already dozens of attackers who aren't telling us about it and are already exploiting it. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. They could be the first ones to find it, but I think oftentimes they're finding it probably, and some other attacker also has. It's the odds that only one person knows that are pretty rare. I think it's the odds are only one person with a white hat is willing to come up and speak about it, meaning it's probably already in use by someone somewhere who's doing it for nefarious reasons. So I'm all for, yeah, let's hire more of these. Let's do more of these, find the bug challenges, because anything we can do to prevent future exploits or prevent an attacker from finding something down the road in the code is absolutely helpful for us in the cybersecurity world, no doubt about it.
For sure. And James, are there any concerns with this growth in this industry or new profession? If you, like Tyler said, if you put your pessimist hat on, what kind of issues might the growth of this industry cause?
Just the information itself. What are they doing with that information? Are they themselves keeping it confidential? And what happens if a white hat hacking group comes under attack? Well, some of that information that they've gathered, could it be exploited? And how are we going to maintain or make sure that all the folks that say they're white hat hackers really are? Is someone doing a white hat hack attack and then turning around and selling that information off? How do we ensure that's not happening? So some kind of a compliance regulation, maybe in the future. I don't know. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think really I think the companies that are providing these bug bounties just need to make it financially beneficial and attractive to the white hat hackers to continue to responsibly disclose the vulnerabilities to the organization rather than selling them on the black market. As long as that exists or is at least close, because people by nature don't want to be part of a criminal. Most people, I would say, don't want to be part of a criminal enterprise or undertaking. So as long as it's, the compensation is kind of close or at least attractive enough to maintain your job and your lifestyle, then I think that's the key, right? If people stop offering these bounties or the criminal market starts paying 10x for a vulnerability versus what companies are willing to pay, then at that point, I think there's just a misalignment there. I'm saying that would excuse anybody from turning from a white hat to a black hat or a gray hat, but I'm just saying that's a good way to incentivize people. One other thing I wanted to mention is that there are actually organizations out there like HackerOne. You can actually outsource your entire bug bounty program to these organizations. So we as a company, let's just say Executech, while we don't have a lot of public facing assets or custom applications, if we did, like if we were a SaaS company and we wanted to have a bug bounty program, we could outsource the entire thing to HackerOne. They would run it for us. They would receive the disclosures from the hackers. They would be responsible for vetting those and then alerting us if it truly is something that's wrong, and then we would fix it. And then HackerOne would actually be responsible for paying the bug bounty operators on our behalf. It's really cool. I've worked with HackerOne in the past, and I mean, there's other organizations out there like that, but that's just one that I've worked with in the past.
That's really cool, because that was the other thing that I was going to say is if you're an organization, one of these guys reaches out to you with a vulnerability, I would definitely suggest you loop other people into the conversation if you're unsure. You always want to verify so it doesn't turn into the Norton antivirus situation where it comes pre-installed on any computer you buy. And then even though it's a brand new computer, the pop-up of Norton comes up and says, we found 9,127 vulnerabilities, and they blow everything out of proportion. So have that open communication, loop other people in so that you can verify.
Yeah, and I say if you're a SaaS company in particular, software as a service company, you have to in this day and age have a bug bounty program or at least a responsible disclosure program. And now you don't have to you don't have to formalize your bug bounty program if you don't want to, but I would recommend it. Again, at least have instructions on your site about how to responsibly disclose vulnerabilities that are found. And yeah, it's just the way things work nowadays.
Yep. Well, great. I think that gave us a lot of good information. Are there any final thoughts from either of you on white hat hackers?
To touch on the social hacking thing, that's a real thing. You can go on CNN and see. I recorded this video. I put it on a different presentation of this young lady at a conference who sat down with a reporter and using a simulated baby cry, placed a call to his cell phone provider and acted like she was harried and stressed and the baby was keeping him, and just wrote this story about how her husband left her in charge of the cell phones anyway. And it wasn't long. It was probably under 2 minutes before she had full access to his cell phone account. So just be careful out there what you're using, what you believe, and please encourage all of these, particularly the cell phone companies, to start being a lot more secure about who gets access and when and how.
Yep, I agree. Social engineering is very real, and it is a major concern.
That's a great point, James and Derek. So yeah, I think that's well said.
All right. Well, thank you, James and Tyler, for filling us in a little bit about this and having this conversation about white hat and gray hat and red hat hackers. And I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler.